Guide to D&D. For those of you that are new, I'm Lizzie. Now, I do have a quick apology to give you guys. I was supposed to put this video out more than a week ago. I've actually had some major problems with my video editing software. It lost my original video for this, so I've had to start all over again and just redo everything. And life has kind of gotten in the way of doing that a little bit. Now, this episode is about character sheets, and I'm going to be using the official ones from Wizards of the Coast. I will put a link down below so that if you want to go and download them, you certainly can. They're there for free. Now, I'm going to be showing you where everything is on those character sheets. It shouldn't be too long of a video though, and that way when we come to do the video on actually filling one out, so that would be after I've done classes, races, backgrounds, etc., then you know where everything is. With that said, I think we should probably get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the standard character sheet. Now, this is the one that's in the back of the player's handbook, so you can get it from there. Alternatively, you can get it from the link that I'm putting down below. It is completely free on there, so don't worry if you don't want to. First, we have a box here for your character's name. Every character has a name, and that's where you'd put that. Next, you have a series of 6 boxes. Words. I'm so sorry. I'm having a bit of a weird day. Next, you have a series of 6 boxes where you can put additional information about your character. So you have class and level. So this is what sort of character that you are. I will be doing a series of videos on classes, so don't worry too much if you don't know what they are. That is coming, I promise. Then you have level, which is the level you're playing at. And that can be anywhere from level 1 to 20. Normally, I'd recommend starting at level 1 for new players. Below that, we have a box called race. And this is what sort of character you're playing. So that could be an elf, a halfling, a human, etc., etc. Again, I'm going to do a couple of videos on race so that you have some idea of them. In the centre, we have background, and this is what your character was doing before they became an adventurer. Now, again, I'm going to do a series of videos on that, and into one of them I will slot the next little bit of information, which is alignment. You don't need to worry too much about that right now, because like I said, I will go into them in more detail. At the very top on the right hand side, we have a section for player name, and this is just your name. So you would put your name in here, and it will help you find your character sheet if you lose it in a pile of others. Below that, we have a section for experience points, and that's just a way of leveling up. I will go into that in a later video, just because we don't need to know them right now. On the left hand side, we have a series of 6 boxes, and these are your ability stats, or ability scores, they sometimes get called. Now, I'm going to go into more detail about what those scores are and what they mean in a video about how to actually determine those scores. But for the purposes of this video, I would always recommend putting the actual score or stat in that little box there, and then your modifier in the one above. And that's just because the modifier is more useful for gameplay, and it's easier if it's a bit bigger. If we move to the right, we have a box labelled inspiration. Now, you will sometimes get inspiration from your DM. You'll also sometimes get it from another character. It all depends on the abilities, and you would just put what dice that you can add to some of your rolls in there. I'll go into that in a bit more detail sort of later on as well, because certain inspiration can be used with certain types of rolls. Below that, we have a box for proficiency bonus, and this is something that you will always know, and if you're proficient in a skill or saving throw, you're supposed to be particularly good with that, so you'll be able to add your proficiency bonus to that. Handily moving on to saving throws is the saving throws box. Sometimes if your character has something that's bad that's going to happen to them, you might need to make a roll to see if you can avoid that. And you would then use these saving throws. There's a series of boxes for you to say whether or not you're proficient in that saving throw. You will not be proficient in all of them. And then you have a set of spaces where you can write the modifier for that saving throw. And then you also have next to that what the ability is that you're making the saving throw for. If we move down below that, we have your skills box. And this is laid out in exactly the same way as your saving throws box, with bubbles to say, yes, I'm proficient in this, and somewhere to put your modifier. The only difference is these skills are labelled alphabetically, and then also have the associated ability written next to them to help you determine what your modifier is. Below that, we have our passive wisdom or passive perception box. Your passive perception is just your character's ability to see what's going on around them. I'll go into how that's worked out at a later date. Now below that, we have our other proficiencies and languages box. So this is where you would put the weapons, the tools, the armour, even vehicles that your character can use. You would also put the languages that your character can speak in this box. I do apologise for the jingling. One of the cats is playing with a toy and it's making a little bit of noise. If we scroll back up to the top, we have this little box here. So we have armour class. In a combat situation, this is what your DM or your enemies would need to roll in order to hit your character and cause damage. I am going to do a whole video on combat and run like a mock combat for you guys. I've got a couple of people who have volunteered to actually do that with me, which is very kind of them. If we move to the right, we have initiative. This determines your turn order in combat. Then we have speed, and that's just how fast your character can move, especially in a combat situation. That's going to be really useful. Below that, we have your hit points box. In terms of video games, for those of you that play video games, your hit points are your health. So your current hit points would never be above your maximum hit points, because that is the most that you can have at any one given time at that level. So for example, if you have 9 hit points, you could then end up with up to 9 hit points in your current hit points box, but you would never have over that. Below that, we have temporary hit points. Now, like it suggests in the name, these are temporary. You don't start with them from the start. They're something that you would get from certain abilities and certain spells. But they would be used in a combat situation before your actual hit points. If we go below that to the left, we have your hit dice. Now, hit dice are what determine your hit points. However, they are also used during a short rest if you need to actually heal. So you would put what dice you have in there. Oop, don't know why I put a 68 there. There we go, so it would be a D. And then you would just put how many you have at any one given time. And you always have a number of hit dice equal to your level. If we move to your right, we have the death saving throws box. In combat, if you get taken to 0 hit points or below 0 hit points, you are actively dying and need to start making death saving throws. So you would then fill out these little bubbles if you make successes, or these little bubbles if you end up with failures. So if you roll a 10 or above on a d20, that is a success. If you roll below a 10, that is a failure. Again, I'll go into that in more detail when it comes to the combat one. So below that, we have attacks and spellcasting. So in here is where you would put your weapons. So you would put your weapons in these little boxes here. You would then put the modifier that you would use when you're attacking, and then the damage and type. And I've just put dagger in there because it's in my brain. It's one of the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. So you only get 3 little boxes there So personally, I use the open space below to put additional weapons if I need to. However, you can use that to list your favourite spells as well if you wanted to. If we move below that, we have our equipment box. So you will get your equipment from your background, but also from your class, and you can buy your own equipment in. So you just put it in there so you know where it is, so it's easy to find what you need. On the left hand side, we have a series of 5 bubbles. Now I'm actually going to skip the middle one and go back to it, and you'll see why when I go back to it. First we have CP. That is copper pieces, and a copper piece is the smallest coin that you will get in the game. Then you have SP, which is silver pieces. You have GP for gold pieces and PP for platinum pieces. And a platinum piece is the largest coin that you will get in the game. Now the one I skipped over is EP. That's actually for electrum pieces and is apparently valued between silver and gold. I have never, ever in my entire time playing D&D seen somebody use electrum. Your DM might, but you know, that's completely up to them. Generally though, DMs don't use it. It's just an additional complication. If we move to the right again and towards the top again, we have this little box here with 4 little sections. This is just some additional information about your character themselves. So personally, I get more use out of the personality traits and flaws, but I do fill all 4 of them out. There's something that you can get from your background. You can also make them up yourself. Normally I'd recommend looking at the backgrounds first though, just because it gives you some idea of what needs to go in there. Below that we have a box called Features and Traits. And this is just where you would put the abilities that you get from your class, from your race and from your background. You'd just be able to pop them all in there. Bear in mind the size of the box. If, like me, you have atrocious handwriting that ends up quite large sometimes, that box will fill up very quickly. We're going to move on to the second page now. This is your character details page. You don't have to fill this out. Some people like to though. So you've got another section for your character's name. Then you have a set of 6 boxes here for some more details about your character. The more important ones I'd say would be height and weight, although age can be fairly important sometimes as well. However, feel free to fill all of them out. I do personally. So for your weight, there are certain magic items that actually use your weight as a determining factor on whether or not you can use them. And then for your height, that can also give some indication of whether or not you can duck behind something, or if you're going into a tunnel, whether or not you can walk standing up or you have to crawl, etc. So on the left hand side, we have a box called Character Appearance. Now on the form fillable version, which is what this is, you're supposed to put an image in there. However, if you print it out, you can just write in a description of your character. If you are putting an image in there, feel free to draw something yourself if you can draw. Personally, I can barely draw a circle around a penny, so I would always go online and look for something that's similar enough to what I need. You can also commission art if you'd like to as well. There's loads of people out there that will draw your characters for you. Although bear in mind that does have an additional cost. So if you're not wanting to spend too much, that may not be the option for you. Next, we have a box called Allies and Organisations. So I don't really use this box myself. If I'm playing one of the backgrounds, which is Guild Artisan, I would normally put the guild in this box. If I'm playing another one, which is Acolyte, I would also maybe put the god that I'm associated with in here. I might put them in this little box here, so put the name there, and then put the symbol in that bit there. If I'm playing a cleric, I might also, which is one of the classes, I might use this little bit here as well for the god. If we scroll down below, on the left hand side again, we have character backstory. So this is just a way to cement your character in the world that they're in. In the in-person game that I am running, I have actually asked my players to give me some idea of their backstory just so I can give them their own personal side quests and work them into the story a little bit better. In the middle, we have another box for features and traits, which is really useful if, like me, you fill up that first box really, really quickly. Again, bear in mind the size of this box along with the size of your handwriting. If it fills up quickly again, that's where I'd recommend using a notebook. Below that, we have a box for treasure. In any D&D game, you are going to get treasure. And this is just somewhere nice that you can put that so you don't have to worry too much about looking through pages and pages and pages of treasure to find the equipment you need. This is just a nice little separate section. We're going to move on to the third and final page in this character sheet, and it is one that is not needed by everybody, and that is your spellcasting sheet. So only some classes are able to cast spells, and you would actually put the spellcasting class in there. And now they have updated some of the classes and subclasses, and I will explain them in that later video, don't worry, so that there are additional classes that can cast spells now. But for example, if you're playing an assassin, you're not going to be casting spells, so you don't need to worry about this. An assassin is one of the rogue subclasses, just for those that are interested. So you would put the class that allows you to cast spells in there. You would then put the spellcasting ability in there, and this is generally wisdom, intelligence, or charisma. Next, we have a box for your spell save DC, and this is what someone would have to roll in order to avoid a spell that you're casting on them from actually affecting them. If we move to the right, we have your spell attack bonus. So if you're making a spell attack, you would then add this bonus to that spell attack roll, rather than an actual bonus that's different for different spells. It's the same for all attack spells. Next, we have a series of boxes, and I'm going to go through the cantrips one first. So this is where you would put the level 0 spells. So this means you have to use a spell slot to cast a cantrip. You can cast as many of these cantrips as you'd like, but you do only know a certain amount of them. So you don't know every single cantrip in the game. You can't also cast cantrips at higher levels, so that's something to remember. The next set of boxes is labelled levels 1 to 9. Level 9 is the highest level spell that you will get in the game. However, you do only know, or have, a certain number of spell slots per spell level. And those change as you level up your character. So when you're putting the amount of spell slots you have in a particular spell level, you would put it under slots total. And then when you use your spells, you would change the number under slots expended. So you can never have more slots expended than the ones you have. You have a section labelled spell name, and this is where you can just put the spells that you know. Now, some classes have access to all of their spells, and they just prepare certain ones day by day or level by level. It depends on certain classes. However, I personally, because I have atrocious handwriting, fill out my character sheet on my laptop, and then I can then just change the spells written in here when I need to. And I would just use these bubbles, which is what you would normally tick to say you've got them prepared, just to indicate that it's a ritual and that I cast them in a different way. So that is the standard character sheet. Okay, next we're going to look at the alternative character sheet. Now, for things like the character details and the spellcasting sheet, they're exactly the same as the previous one, so I'm not going to go through them again. This is one of the alternatives. It is a Wizards of the Coast alternative, and there's just a few little differences in how everything's laid out, so I'm just going to quickly go through that. Obviously, they've changed the design a little bit, so some of the shapes on things are a little bit different, and some of the sizes are slightly different as well. So first change is on the left-hand side. They've put proficiency bonus at the top. Then they've got inspiration below that. They've just sort of moved things around a little bit. For your ability scores or stats, they've moved the box or the bubble to put them in from the bottom to the top, and again change the size. Now, one of the other big changes is they no longer have a box separately for saving throws and for skills. They put them next to the associated ability, which can make things a little bit easier to find. Although if you're not expecting them to be there, it can make things a little trickier. Now, so what this means is previously, if you were, for example, looking for nature, you would need to go through all of that little list of skills alphabetically to find where nature is. However, in this, if you know that it is an intelligence-based skill, you can then go down to intelligence, look through the intelligence skills next to it, and find where nature is. Again, you still have your passive wisdom box below there. Your box for other proficiencies and languages is slightly smaller, as is your box for features and traits, but the box for equipment and character notes is slightly bigger. And there is also nowhere to put the amount of money that you've got on this one. Now, personally, I quite like this one just because of the change where you've got the skills next to your abilities, but some people find it a bit trickier to use. So that is that one. Nice, short and sweet for you guys. Okay, so this is our third and final character sheet from Wizards of the Coast that we're going through. So what you might notice, there is a lot of changes on this one. So all of the information about your character, so like their name, their alignment, their race, their class, etc., is all in a big center circle here. It's also where you would put the level that you are. You would put your experience points. You would put how many experience points you need for your next level in here as well. So that can actually help you with have some idea of where you need to go and what you need to get. You then have the place for your ability score here, as well as for the modifier here. Languages are there. Vision would be how far you can see. So you have a whole host of just determining details in here instead now. Things like size, you might notice is in the middle there. That would be small, medium or large. Generally you would be medium. Up here you have a spot for class features, and then they have a separate one for racial traits. So it's actually allowing you to separate out the traits and abilities that you will get from your class and from your race. There's a section here for your weapon attacks, another one for your spell attacks, a little place for you to stick a portrait of your character there. Again, you also have spellcasting details there. They've moved the section for your hit points there, and then a section for your spells, along with prepared spells that you have. They have a little box here for your amount of money. And then below that, they've put armor class and then AC with no armor. So if you're not wearing armor, that's where you can put what your AC or armor class would be without that armor. So if, for example, your character is asleep and gets attacked in the middle of the night when you're not wearing your armor, that then gives you some idea of what your new armor class would be. Below that, you have proficiencies. So you have things like your tools, weapons, and armors, and somewhere that you can write in the skills that you know. You then have equipment here on this second page, a complete section for treasure, including for gems and art objects. They've given you a section for feats, a section for notes, a section for your background. I'm guessing this is the ammunition that you would have, as well as the torches that you would have, and any potions you might have. Now, one thing you might notice here is this looks a little messy. It also has things in so many different places. It could be quite difficult to use. I'm scrolling up and down. I'm so sorry, guys. It's not one I would personally use. If you like the look of it though and you want to use it, feel free, go for it. But as I said, it's not for me. So I think we're going to move on to the wrap up. Okay, so we've actually gone through a few of the Wizards of the Coast character sheets there. Now, there are others out there. We personally use ones that somebody has custom made that is actually based around the specific classes. Unfortunately, I can't remember where we actually got them from, which is why I haven't shown them to you, and I don't want to show things to you that I can't link to where you can get them, just to give those creators a bit of love. Now, like I said, take a look and see what suits you, because you might surprise yourself. There might be character sheets that you thought, actually, I don't really think I'll like using that you do in the end. The next video is probably going to be on races and sort of start that little bit. Because of how many there are, I'm probably going to end up doing 2. But we'll obviously cross that bridge when it comes to it next week. Now, I am also going to be putting out weekly polls starting from the second races video, just to determine what I'm putting into that character sheet when we start filling it out. So please go vote on what you would like to be in this character sheet. So there'll be a separate one for race, separate one for class, even one for backgrounds as well, so we can actually fully go through everything. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please drop me a bit of a like. And if there's something that you want me to go through, just let me know down in the comments below. I'm happy to look at anything for you guys. With that said, I'm going to end there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And again, I'm so sorry this is a week late. Bye, guys.